Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining really early. We're going to be starting in the next minute. When we start, we'll do all the introductions and let you know what the housekeeping rules are for this webinar. So thank you so much for joining, and just keep joining. Thank you. Great. I think we can start around now. So just so you know what this webinar is about, if you're just joining us. First of all, thank you for joining. My name is Barbara Izilein. I'm the Director for Africa for the University of Oxford Climate Alumni Network. And we have a number of focus sectors, and this is one of them. And that's why we're bringing this webinar to you this afternoon. Before I introduce the topic, I'm going to introduce the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for the Oxford Climate Alumni Network, to give the opening remarks, and then we can all settle in and start the business for the day. So very quickly, I will hand it over to Dr. Eseowe. Before that, I beg your pardon, before that, the housekeeping rules. So just so you know, it's being recorded. I'm sure you've gotten that prompt already. It's being recorded, and we may have the videos ready to share afterwards, but we'll let you know. Second thing is to drop a question, please use the chat box. Just type question, so I know it's a question and not a comment when we start the actual webinar. And feel free to chat and engage yourselves in the chat box, with the chat box. If you have any concerns, please drop it in the chat box, and I'm sure one of my colleagues will assist with that. So thank you. And again, back to Dr. Eseowe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Barbara, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eseowe, and I have the distinct privilege of serving as the Chief Executive of the University of Oxford Climate Alumni Network. It's a pleasure to give the opening remarks today, and I want to thank our guest, Ademola Ogunbanjo, for the CEO of Oando Clean Energy, for joining us in this webinar. Just a bit of background. I would want Barbara to handle her show, but just to give a few comments about OxCAN and where we are, who we are, and all of that. OxCAN, as we call it, is the University of Oxford Climate Alumni Network. It is a UK-registered charity and a special interest alumni group of the University of Oxford, and it exists to connect all Oxford alumni, staff, students, and members of their network to collaborate for climate and accelerate the transition to net zero. Our vision is encapsulated around three key pillars: to learn, to connect, and to act. And the idea here is that we want to create a world where sustainable practices are the norm, and where Oxford alumni remain at the forefront of driving a transition to a low-carbon economy. In terms of our history, we were established a few years ago, and the idea really was that we realized that we needed to come together to act, leveraging the skills, the expertise, and knowledge of Oxford alumni. And the idea really was that the network would act as a springboard of sorts that would connect disparate actors within the climate change and sustainability ecosystem. And the idea for us was to do two things. First, to act as an aggregator of sorts in terms of all the divergent interests, and most importantly, to serve as a think tank that would deliver cutting-edge actionable policy advice to stakeholders in the ecosystem. In terms of eligibility, membership is open to all current students of the university, former students, staff, and we also have now a group for associate members who we call Friends of OxCAN, who we believe would join us in our fight against climate change. We currently have a diverse membership database. We've got members in the academia. We've got members in policy. We've got members in government. The idea really is to have a broad-based coalition of membership to drive our vision for climate change and a transition to a low carbon economy. For us, we've got three major objectives. For us, we want to build communities, we want to transfer knowledge, and want to translate research. And the idea is that once we are able to get Oxford alumni to act as specialists within their respective spheres, we want to ensure that they can engender peer-to-peer learning and build on the work of our 4 working groups to ensure that Oxford alumni can drive climate action in their respective spheres, and most importantly, ensure that the working groups of OxCAN can actually serve as a platform for bringing folks together to focus on special interests within the climate change and sustainability ecosystem. We are also big on transferring knowledge, and I think that's one of the things we are doing here today. The idea is to work with stakeholders within the climate change and sustainability ecosystem to focus on new areas of research and praxis with a view to identifying what are the possible directions of travel in terms of climate policy. And one of the things we'll be looking at today is the direction of travel for e-mobility. And we are keen to hear from the CEO of Oando Clean Energy what their current priorities are and how we can learn from their own experiences with a view to ensuring that Africa benefits from an e-mobility framework that not just but the people and the planet. Helping us fashion a pathway forward for policies and engagement. So we are very happy to have the CEO of Oando Clean Energy. We don't want to take a lot of time this afternoon, but just to say that OxCAN is looking forward to further collaboration with corporates, the academia, and partners, so as to ensure that we can collectively act for climate in a meaningful and strategic manner. So I want to thank everyone again for joining us. I can see that we've reached our full capacity, and what we hope that in our next run we'll have a much wider webinar platform to host this. I want to thank Barbara for ensuring this happened and for putting together what promises to be a very interesting session this afternoon. So on this note, I would hand over to Barbara, and I welcome the Oando CEO and his team and all participants, and we look forward to a very engaging conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Essay. Thank you for that powerful introduction. Thank you for that. Very quickly, I'll introduce myself again. My name is Barbara Izilein, and today I'm just going to stick to this introduction. I'm the director for Africa, the Africa region, for the OxCAN. So you already know what the OxCAN is, the University of Oxford Climate Alumni Network. And I'm going to be having my friend, Ademola Ogunbanjo, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself once his video is turned on, so you can see who we have today. And he will introduce himself and just tell us a little bit about Oando Clean Energy Limited, and then we'll take it up from there. So Ademola, if you're online, you can unmute yourself and turn on your video. Thank you. Okay, can you hear me, Ademola? Okay, I need
You need to let him in. You need to enable him. You need to
I've enabled you. I've sent you a request. Okay, good.
Yeah. Hi, Barbara. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
You may not have enabled my video yet.
Okay.
Unless rather I stay hidden.
No. I don't need to see your face. So you can enable your video now. You're not
okay. There we are. So, well, my name is Ademola Ogunbanjo. I am president and CEO of Oando Clean Energy, and we founded Oando Clean Energy about 3 years ago. we started looking into the possibility of doing that in 2020, August 13 to be precise. And we did that for two reasons, essentially. Reason number one, recognizing that energy was at the edge of chaos, still is, by the way. We can tell what energy sector is coming to displace the fossil energy sector. And the conversation is not about whether it will happen. The conversation is about when it will happen. And as an organization that intends to remain a relevant, integrated energy company into the next century, we recognize how essential it was for us to embrace this clean energy sector that will someday displace the fossil energy sector. So that's one reason for business continuity. And the second reason is the reality of climate change. We all could see, we still can see the impact of climate change globally, but more importantly on African countries and communities. The fact that in Africa, we have less resilient infrastructure, we have people being displaced due to the impact of climate change. There are two major reasons why people get displaced in Africa. It is conflict and climate. And we have also found that a larger part of the conflict is also caused by the impact of climate change. So whilst Africa holds less than 20% of global population, Africa happens to hold 50% of the population of internally displaced people globally. And that we can trace to conflict that's related to climate change. Some we can trace directly to climate change itself, whether it is the activities of herdsmen coming down from the north, moving closer into the south, looking for forage for their herd because of desertification or other diverse reasons. That said, over the last 3 years, we have engaged in thought leadership. We've continued to study the sector to understand it better and how we can intervene in the sector to roll back the impact of climate change. And we've looked at multiple verticals in that time, designing and developing projects in wind energy space, solar energy, geothermal energy, biofuels, solid waste management, and of course, the reason why we're gathered here today, which is sustainable transport that we have split into. There's electric transportation for municipal purposes, and there is hydrogen or biofuel power transportation for long-haul purposes. And so that's what we've done over time. Our mandate is simple. It is the design and development of climate-friendly and bankable projects. I think I should pause at this point. So Barbara.
For a bit. Awesome, great to hear. I think we connected the first time you made a presentation about your plans for all of those things. So for today, I'm going to act like I don't know anything about what you do. I should have never met you, so I'm going to be asking you questions that I may know, but just so that you can answer for everyone that's on the call. So yes, clean energy, I get that, there are different areas, wind, solar, and all of that. Why e-mobility, right? Looking at and also I wanted to touch on the challenges and opportunities that made you consider this in the first place, and why, So back to you.
Pretty straightforward, to be honest. When you look at global GHG emissions, particularly a logistics-based economy, as much as you find in Africa. And I say we're a logistics-based economy because we import most of what we consume. So we move a lot of goods around, and we also move around a lot as a people. You find that transportation contributes significantly to our GHG emissions numbers. If we could decarbonize transportation in Africa, specifically in Nigeria, we will make giant strides towards achieving our net zero agenda. So take Lagos State, for example, signing up to net zero by 2050, which is a decade ahead of the nation of 2060 target. And then when you look at the energy transition plan that was published in August 2022, Nigeria committed to electrifying all public transportation by 2060. And we felt it was essential to support what the federal government had committed to on one hand, and of course, starting with Lagos State, helping them achieve more rapidly their net zero agenda, particularly in the space of transportation. Lagos State holds about over 12 to 15% of the population of Nigeria. So if we're able to deliver a decarbonized public transport system in Lagos, what that means is we'll be able to roll it out across the country, having learned from the rollout in Lagos. So it was that simple, really, a decision to make, just attacking or addressing, more like it, areas of high carbon emission, and just looking at how we can de-escalate, emissions in those sectors. And of course, transportation happens to be one of them. Now, it's important to note that when we set out to do this, what we really set out to do was to build the next downstream sector for mobility. One that would dispense electricity instead of petrol or diesel. On the petrol and diesel side, as a brand, Oando, we've been there, done that, got a t-shirt. But we recognize our need to continue to support mobility on the continent. And we also are aware that that mobility this time around will, over time, pivot towards electricity as a mode of energy supply. So that's actually what we set out to do. Our investment in vehicles is just to pull the trigger on demand for the charging infrastructure that we will be building across the country, that we believe will be powered first by fossil gas, for starters. There will, of course, be integration of solar, battery, and biogas as well. But over time, we then remove fossil gas and introduce more biogas, hydrogen, as we democratize the supply of hydrogen and the commercials begin to make sense, and then we have a 360 degrees clean transport system. So we have founded, as a subsidiary of Oando Clean Energy, a transport company that is called Oando Clean Transport Solutions Limited. And the mandate of that company is to roll out 100% clean transport solution for deployment across different states in Nigeria and the continent as well.
So thanks for mentioning the plan to go completely green, because as you know, in Africa, let me not say about Nigeria, electricity is still a major issue. Not all the countries in Africa, but in some countries in Africa, right? So we're not there yet. I know a number of countries are committing to 90% renewables to power their electric vehicles. But I wanted to touch a bit on the transportation issue, right? That's actually the sector that we're focusing on today. So electric vehicles for transportation. What's been your experience? As you know, in Lagos, they have different modes of transportation. People use their private cars, people use the buses a lot, and they have the railway as well. What's been your experience transitioning the mindsets, right? And trying to stir up the demand for these local transportations, moving them from using the fuel or the petrol system, where you can easily just stop at a gas station and just get a top up, to now transitioning to using electric vehicles where you need to plan your recharge. It's not like, you need to plan it, because we're not there yet where we have charging stations everywhere in Nigeria. So what's your strategy on that?
Interestingly, it's another change management, program, right? So, and as we all know, change takes time, right? in pivoting from internal combustion engine vehicles that consume petrol and diesel to electric, we have seen a few challenges, and I'll speak to them in bits. Number one is the attitude of the federal government, which negates the commitment to electrifying public transportation as published in the Energy Transition Plan only, 3 years ago. That plan was published in 2022, and by 2024, the federal government pivoted to CNG vehicles. So we started to build our transport system on an energy source that is known as a transition source. So what that does is, from the first day that you roll out the program, that transport system is obsolete, right? So the way the government is leaning towards gas these days doesn't make it easy for the public to lean towards electric, but that can be handled, all right? And we're continuing to have the conversation in that regard. That said, the argument for electric vehicles is one that is both commercial and environmental, right? Yes, today it still, costs a little more to acquire an electric vehicle over the internal combustion engine counterpart, but it costs a whole lot less for maintenance. Whilst you have your regular diesel engine vehicle or petrol engine vehicle with over 2,000 components, the electric version has barely 20 components. So much fewer moving parts, no radiator, no engines, no oil change, no carburetor issues, nothing, all right? It's battery, motors, and the rest of it. So it costs a whole lot less to maintain, and that's something that our people are sensitive to. But the cost of acquiring the vehicle right off the bat is, a major issue for most of us. You have banks like Sterling Bank through Corey, their brand for pushing EV adoption, financing electric vehicle acquisition using different financing terms than the ICE. But let's speak to what we have experienced over the last 2 years. We've deployed electric buses in Lagos for mass transportation, and we set out to test 4 things. Number one is the technology. How will the batteries behave in our environment under the temperature conditions that we have, the humidity of the country, the terrain, and all of that? What would the technology be like within our environment? Secondly, operations resilience. Can these buses carry as many people as their diesel engine counterparts? Can they work for as long, in the day, the same number of hours that their diesel engine counterparts do? Number 3, what's environmental acceptance, which speaks directly to, a portion of the question that you've asked. How have people embraced the idea? In the start, people have said, oh, don't get on the electric bus because you'll just run out of energy in the middle of nowhere, and then, you'll be stranded. But it's the same principle. If you don't fuel your car or charge your vehicle, you will be stranded at some point. But we have seen a situation where the acceptance of the people of the electric bus has been mind-boggling. There have been cases where people have been on the queue to get on a diesel engine bus, then notice that the next bus is the electric bus that we've deployed. And they go back behind the queue so they can get on the electric bus. Now, this is not because they care so much about their carbon footprint, but because the AC works and the bus is silent, right? And it is new. And there's the novelty of telling a story when they get home. I got on the electric bus. They cost the same to ride because that market is regulated, because it's mass market, so it's regulated by the state government. But the acceptance has been really good. The operations resilience has been really good as well. They do 14 hours a day on average, which is about 236 kilometers on average every day. The highest we've seen is 312 kilometers in one day. They do 280 kilometers on a full charge, but they have regenerative capacity due to the braking system being electromagnetic for battery charge that sits at about 32% average, and they burn about an average of 0.9 kilowatt hour per kilometer. And they've worked well. On the commercial side, however, the buses that we acquired for the proof of concept phase were much more expensive than the buses that are available today, because we felt it was necessary that we put our best foot forward, deploying top quality buses, working with Yutong as a top OEM globally, and that's paid off. So now for the full rollout phase, we continue to work with Yutong, but we have worked with Lamata, that's a state representing Lagos State government, to rejig the spec of the buses so that we can bring down acquisition cost, and so this can make sense on a commercial basis. But what has to be done is for people to see that electric vehicles work, and they work well, and that there's an ecosystem that supports the vehicle. So when you import that electric vehicle, who will maintain it for you? So they need to see those workshops, and we're building them. They need to see that there's a charging station, and we're building charging depots for our vehicles, right? But when you buy an electric vehicle as well, you buy your own charging units, mostly AC chargers. So what you find in public will be DC fast chargers. But when you buy your own, what you buy will be AC chargers, so that when you park at home, you just plug your car in, and in 6 to 7 hours, you get a full charge. Most of these vehicles have 450, 500, 550 kilometers on a full charge. And you can use, if your lifestyle was like mine, I go home, I come to work, I go to church on Sunday, and that's about it. I will use 550 kilometers, one single charge, for like 3 weeks before I need to charge again. But as people see more and more chargers being rolled out in town, seeing that there is also maintenance centers that are available, the confidence to procure these vehicles will change. Will grow. And as they grow, we'll see more electric vehicles. We're already seeing some of them being used for taxi hailing services across different brands, whether it is the Lagride brand or some other new brand that came out recently, deploying electric vehicles. At Oando Clean Transport Solutions Limited, we're looking to bring in 4,000 electric vehicles for taxi hailing services, deploying about 550 high-capacity electric buses for mass transportation. And these are the things that will give the market let me use the word ginger, the ginger it requires, to get excited about the adoption of electric vehicles, recognizing that, the environmental gains, are significant, and then the commercial gains are also quite meaningful as well.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I'm going to ask you 2 questions in one. Is today, so let's say you deployed this, let's say last year or the year before, let me just say last year. What do you see as sustainability of the technology? Because as you know, from when you rolled out to this point, we have different, we've had different electric vehicles in the country. And likewise in other parts of the country where people are now producing different kinds. And sure, that I heard recently, or I've seen the video where there's a car that can work without getting recharged, right? What do you see as the future of this? Because if you're getting cars that have to be charged through the spot chargers in different locations, when we now have in circulation the cars that don't need to be charged, I say intentionally or what? No, I'm sure you understand what I mean. How do you see the market moving into that? Or do you think that's somewhere in the future and we're not there yet?
Right. Speaking about vehicles that don't require charging, I saw the video as well, something that was put together by some Zimbabwean, I think. And that speaks to perpetual motion. And that is the technology that all engineers in the world that are engaged with mobility have been looking for since the time, we came to be, right? So if it is indeed true, I will embrace the technology, as I'm sure you would as well, because all you require is to crank it to start to run, and then it never stops, right? I doubt it, by the way. But let's see. I'm just a skeptic in that regard. The proliferation of that technology will be something that will change mobility forever. That said, I will speak more to what has been proven. Charging is going to become easier, right? And I'll speak to the different models of it. In Sweden today, you find the Swedish government constructing roads that have certain lanes that as you're driving on those roads, your battery is being charged. Now, that's known technology using what you can, it's an electromagnetic charging system, okay? It's the same thing that allows you to place your phone on some surface and then it's charging. So we're seeing that. So charging will become much more seamless. You literally would not need to drive to any charging station to get your vehicles charged. But before the rest of the world roll that out, particularly in the third world where you and I are, you know, that kind of investment may take a minute. And it's not investment that the private sector can do on their own. If at all the private sector will be involved, it will be a PPP arrangement with the public sector. And then, you know, to justify that kind of investment as well, the adoption of electric vehicles for transportation in country would have to have grown significantly. So there will be a market to justify that investment. That's one. Another thing that you will see is battery swapping for bigger vehicles than tricycles. So today, battery swapping is mostly for bikes, two-wheelers and three-wheelers. But you will find, and I have seen in China, where there are certain stations where you just drive up to, you drive onto a ramp. Now, the thing is, it's not all electric vehicles that you can battery swap for today, but there's NIO and there's the Shanghai Automotive International Company, SAIC. They have different brands, and one of the brands that you can battery swap is one that's called it eludes me now, but I've seen it. So you drive onto a ramp, something unscrews the battery, takes it into a chamber for charging, brings out another one, fixes it in, screws it back in, and you roll out. It's done in less than 5 minutes. So you will see that as well, all right? Another improvement that you will see that will make charging easier is the technology of battery manufacturing itself. Japan is doing a lot of work in researching and proliferating the availability of solid-state batteries for mobility. Mercedes-Benz have tested their first solid-state battery for the new S-Class, and it's done over 1,000 miles, right? One of the other advantages you will find beyond range is the time to charge. So today, really, most batteries will charge, if you use a DC fast charger, take the i7, you can move from 20% to 80% in about 37 minutes. That's the BMW i7 electric, right? So what will happen with solid state as you find more and more vehicles running on solid state batteries is you'll probably be able to move from 10% to 90% in about 10, 15 minutes, about the same time it takes you to drive up to a gas station to buy petrol, right? So those are the things that you will see over time to make the adoption of electric vehicles easier, because it will no longer be cumbersome, right, to charge your vehicles. Range anxiety continues to be an issue, and what some OEMs have done, manufacturers of electric vehicles, what they have done to address range anxiety is the introduction of what you may call like a generator, is a range extender, but it still runs on fossil fuel, right? So, but what it does is it doesn't power your vehicle. It charges your battery as you are on the move. But over time, I want to reckon as well that that fossil fuel generator can become maybe hydrogen fueled or biofuel, so that it's cleaner, all right? The bottom line is there are multiple solutions that are being deployed that will make the adoption of electric vehicles a whole lot easier to do. But on the perpetual motion vehicle, I haven't seen it. I've seen the video, but we've reached out to them, by the way. We sent them an email. They didn't respond. We'll continue to follow up because I just want to see it. And if it is for real, you can be rest assured that we will deploy them.
I trust you on that. I trust you on that. But I want to touch on a very critical area, which is the cost implication. As you know, for now, you're focusing more on the transportation part of electric vehicles, not the personal use of an electric vehicle, which is different, right? Where do you see the cost again? Like I said, I'm in Africa. I don't know anything about the sector. So where do you see the cost today if you're going to make your profits, right? If you're going to make profits on your vehicles, where do you see the cost today? And what would be the impact, or 3 questions, what will be the impact of local manufacturing? And what can the government do better, at least government in Nigeria and government in other parts of Africa? Because now everyone has a plan that they're rolling out, Rwanda, Kenya, just name it, Morocco, Egypt, South Africa, all of it, Burkina Faso. Everyone have, put up a plan, and they've done some proof of concepts already. And I've seen where people import the vehicles and then put the technology in the country and vice versa. Where do you see the cost today, and when you start manufacturing in country, and how that would impact the use of electric vehicles as a main means of transportation, and what can the government do to make it better?
Great. The cost today is still slightly higher than internal combustion engine vehicles, but it has dropped significantly from when we bought the first set of buses and what those same buses are sold for today. There's been like $100,000 shaved off. And it will continue to be like that. Recognize that the cost of the battery is about 45% of the cost of the vehicle itself. And as the battery technology gets better, you'll find the price will go down, the price of the vehicle, but they're becoming more and more affordable today. That's cost-wise, okay? And then, of course, here in Nigeria, we have finally created a process that enables you to import your vehicle, apply through IDEC, and get zero tariff or duty in bringing in your electric vehicle. The country that has done the most, in my opinion, is Ethiopia. Last January, they banned the importation of all other types of vehicles into Ethiopia, only electric vehicles. And what that means is it forces them to build the requisite infrastructure to allow, and capacity as well, to allow that transport system thrive. We haven't done that. As a matter of fact, what we have done is we have refused to walk our talk. We published a policy or a plan, and we just, went sideways only a couple of years after that. So what can government do? We can begin to walk the talk. We can begin to act seriously so that investors can take us seriously. We're currently not encouraging enough the adoption of electric vehicles because of this whole noise around CNG-powered vehicles and all that. However, local assembly may be presumed to impact pricing and drive it lower, but that would be a lie. Reason being that whatever it is that you are assembling locally, you are still importing from outside the country. There is no component in the electric vehicle that is manufactured locally. And even if there was, we have to do so competitively. And there is none. Nothing, not tires, not batteries, not the metal frame, not the leathers for the seats, nothing. So we have to get our acts together as a nation to be able to generate the materials that are required to put a vehicle together locally. It doesn't mean that China manufactures everything. For example, some of the motors that you see are manufactured by Bosch. Bosch is a German brand. But what you find is that the Bosch factory that supplies all those motors are in China. Those factories are in China, right? So bottom line is, whilst I'm not saying that Nigeria needs to manufacture everything, but Nigeria needs to manufacture something and gain competitive advantage on that thing for that to be able to even impact the prices. We've looked at it. We're licensed to manufacture and assemble electric vehicles in Nigeria. We got that license last October, right? But when you look at the numbers, it would make sense for you to actually import, a fully assembled vehicle. The whole idea of creating jobs, when you assemble locally, whether it is semi knockdown or complete knockdown, and all the elements of that, it still doesn't give you any, significant cost advantage. And to prove it, there are one or two companies in Nigeria, Saglev being one of them, assembling electric vehicles in Nigeria. There is also Corey that belongs to Sterling. Reach out to them, try to order a vehicle from them, and the price they'll give you and the price is sold for in China, by the time you compare both, you realize that there's no cost advantage. But does that mean we must not do it? No, we must start. We must do it so that over time we can learn efficiency. And by learning efficiency and incorporating efficiency, then we reduce the cost. And then you have other, companies bubbling up to complement that sector. So you may then have companies that manufacture tires, glass windows, leather panels, leather for the seats or the door panels, whatever it is. You must start first, and then the complements will follow. It's a journey, but what can the federal government do in that regard to encourage it? They have to incentivize that sector. All the countries that have been able to build capacity in this regard, their governments have incentivized the sector.
So I was going to ask, I heard about Ethiopia. Population-wise, they are not close to the Nigerian population. What would you say about the federal government of Nigeria taking a very hard position like that, or in countries like South Africa? I think it will be a crisis, but what do you think?
It will be a crisis if there's no plan. Before you make that kind of decision, you make a plan. You put a plan in place, right? You say, and you don't do it knee-jerk, all right? You basically just have to say, look, by so time, we will stop the importation of internal combustion engine vehicles into the country. Here are the things that are required for electric vehicles to thrive. Therefore, our investments in transportation infrastructure between now and then will be geared towards that. Here are the financing elements that we need to make available for those who want to change. Here is, it's a plan. When you have a plan, then you roll it out in phases. You may even say what will stop will be vehicles of this age will stop coming, but other petrol engine vehicles will still come if they're of this age. And then over time, it will be vehicles of this age till maybe a 15-year plan where you then eradicate it completely. To have no plan is to plan to fail.
I completely agree with that. And I think I want us to go to the questions very soon. But number one question I would like to ask is, now you're still expanding in Nigeria. You have the test run, you've established proof of concept. And like you said, the plan is to now go in scale, right? Is it still a profitable business for the next phase? I know this was a test run. Clearly it works. If people would rather go in a vehicle that is silent, can imagine people taking business calls now on the bus, which you could not do before because you hear the engines really loud. Now the ACs work, people would, the windows are up, you don't have to deal with the pollution in a highly populated city like Lagos State. And so it would always be the preferred, right? For those that can afford it. With the new expansion or with the next phase, where do you see that commercial part of it taking place? Do you think you will still roll it and your next phase as a test run, charity work, CSR, or are you going hitting the market ready to charge market rates?
We must charge market rates. My mandate, like I said earlier, is to design and develop climate-friendly and bankable projects. So to answer your first question, is it profitable? Yes, it's profitable. And it's the only reason we will continue to do it, because it's profitable. Now, is it going to make us rich? No. It's a very, very low margin sector, but we're committed to it. Because for us, the focus is building that next downstream sector for mobility. And there must be demand for it. So as we build out charging infrastructure, train people for technical purposes, whether it's for after-sales service, maintenance, and all that, or even driving, because you don't drive electric vehicles and we drive energy vehicles. So we're training drivers, we're training technicians, we're doing all of that, setting up a new supply chain system to ensure that this ecosystem of electric vehicle can thrive, right? So, and we continue to work with our OEMs to ensure that pricing, is not discouraging. But are we going to become billionaires by doing this? Not today. But can it pay for itself? Yes, it can. And for that purpose, we will continue to partner with government across the country to deploy electric vehicles for mass transportation.
Before I go to the questions, I'll ask this question because we're talking about Africa. Where do you see yourself expanding beyond Nigeria in the near future?
Absolutely.
Future?
Absolutely. We're already putting a bid in South Africa, Cape Town to be precise, to roll out electric buses, same as we have done in Lagos. And that's ongoing. That's with the city of Cape Town. And we'll do the same in Egypt, Ghana. We're having conversations. As a matter of fact, I'm in Ghana on the 27th to continue conversations in that regard. So yes, we're going to expand across the continent.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And please drop your questions in the chat box, and I'm going to ask some of them because we are already out of time. There are a lot of questions to ask you, but I can't really go into all of that now. Let me just jump and see what people are saying. Someone asked that with the current grid collapse, I wouldn't say failure, they said failure, I'll use that word, with the, occasional grid collapse that we experienced last year. The question is, what will be the impact of these charging at home, like you had mentioned, on the vehicles? Is that something you guys have looked at? I know you're looking at transport, which is a more organized charging versus charging at home. Do you see a situation where fluctuation in electricity will affect the technology and, the entire vehicle is condemned? What do you think about that?
Fluctuation in electricity. That's something we're used to as a country, right? Electricity fluctuates. Sometimes we get what we call dirty power, which can damage some of your electrical devices. But even telephones today are designed in a way that when dirty power comes, they reject it. So when you try to charge your phone and with dirty power, it just doesn't charge. That's because it's rejecting it. Electric vehicles are designed the same way. If dirty power comes, it rejects it, right? It just won't charge the battery. So the technology is that intelligent. So, however, the dearth of electricity from the grid can be discouraging. But as you know, we are resourceful people. The reason you and I still get to iron our clothes and go to work or parties, whether there's power from PHCN or not, is because we have figured out how to deliver energy where it is needed. Because energy delivery is modular in nature. All right. So we'll use different sources. And I'm tempted to speak to a question that I see here, even though you're the moderator. But this particular question gets me. and it is and it's asking, you know, can we consider the use of CNG as clean energy for transportation? CNG is not clean. It is fossil energy. It is not clean. It is not as dirty as diesel, but it is not clean. However, it has a role to play in transportation. We believe that rather than using CNG to power or fuel vehicles, asking people to go to conversion centers to change their petrol engine vehicles to CNG-powered vehicles, rather than doing that, we believe that we should pivot to electric vehicles, build charging stations, and use CNG to power those charging stations. It is a transition fuel. And your question is also asked by asking, you know, because you want to know what the practical timelines are, if we can predict the transition period of this energy source. We can't. But the bottom line is it's transition. And we don't call the shots. The global north calls the shots. So when the time comes, they tell us that now CNG or fossil gas in general has become an investment pariah. Once that happens, right, we follow suit. Okay, so let's use CNG for powering commercial activities, powering industrial activities, powering charging stations, so that when the time comes and the global north calls the shots and they say that we shouldn't invest in fossil gas anymore, what are we changing? We're changing the generator. But if that happens today, what will we change? All the vehicles that we have converted to gas will now have to go back to what, right? So rather than use the rolling stock to be powered by gas, let's power generator using gas and let that generator power charging stations, and let's encourage the adoption of electric vehicles across both public transportation and private transportation.
I think your comment is a bit, to summarize it, is let's not make permanent what should be temporary.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what we are trying to say. Let's not
have
vehicles and then we have to convert it, get new ones. So the temporary solution, let's keep it at that. And also where it can easily be replaced instead of where we now have to start a whole mindset shift again. So I completely get you on that. Someone asked a question if you considered Senegal. I haven't really heard a lot of EVs in Senegal. Was that?
Oh, Senegal is doing well EV-wise. They actually, they recently raised about $140 million. Forgive me if I got the number wrong, but they've rolled out an electric mobility system for mass transportation in Senegal, and it has about a little less than 100 buses, 18-meter buses, by the way. You know, so yeah, Senegal is on point, and the government is actually driving that in partnership with the private sector. So when government takes leadership in a country like that, and they're doing it with local private sector players, getting international funding. Until that market matures, you really don't want to go into that market as a Nigerian looking to do the same thing, because they're doing it already, to be honest. And population-wise, they don't need that many, unless you want to start doing transportation out of the municipality into the hinterlands. But the market in Nigeria is large enough for us to focus on. And that's what we're doing at the moment.
Okay, so someone asked around Innoson being able to manufacture EVs. What do you think is the future about? I know that's a very political question. I don't expect you to speak anything bad of the company, but where do you think you are more aligned to purchasing vehicles from Innoson, or are you comfortable with your manufacturers?
Oh no, Innoson is in partnership with a Chinese OEM. I know the Chinese OEM. It's not Innoson's technology, and the Chinese OEM is trusted. So yes, we can do business with Innoson. Okay. It's not their technology. The assembly, the technology, The technical expertise, yeah, it's in partnership with a Chinese OEM that we know very well.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, you are open to exploring that.
Oh, absolutely.
And people have been asking a lot of questions about biogas and all of those, taking plastics. I know that's not, so for all of you asking those questions, we'll have a separate webinar on that. I just want us to focus more on transportation and that shift from using heavily dependent on fossil fuels to EVs. And as you know, everyone knows Africa is shifting. Like I just doing the research, I realized there's so many countries doing that. Now we have a lot of 2 legs and 3 legs. I know you're focusing on the big buses for now, but I think you mentioned that you're going to get smaller taxis or so.
That's correct.
Yeah. So what's that looking like for you guys?
I mean, we're going to start out in Lagos State. We're in the process of getting licensed.
Everything starts in Lagos, you know.
Yeah, because if you succeed in Lagos, you can scale it anywhere else.
Sure.
Right? It's more complex in Lagos. I would even say even more difficult because of the road network, the population.
Because they have the numbers.
They have the numbers as well. So that aids the commercial argument, right? So we're in the process of getting licensed to do that, and we'll bring in 250 vehicles for the pilot, and then we'll scale up to 4,000 over the next 3 years. The market is there. 2024 alone, between Bolt, InDrive, and Uber, 187 billion naira revenue was made for taxi hailing service. 187 billion naira, 36.8 million rides.
Just the organized taxis between Bolt and Uber.
Bolt,
private,
Uber.
Other private transport companies.
Bolt, InDrive, Uber, excluding Lagrant. Just those 3. In Lagos alone, 2024, 187 billion. As a matter of fact, 187.6, because they keep telling me, stop leaving out the 6. Do you have 600 million to dash anyway?
Wow, that's
187.6.
That's a lot of money. So what's the thinking? Let's go back to Oando now. Is the thinking to have a similar system where you have, because I know you mentioned you have a transport company registered already that can book the business, assemble and manufacture when the time comes. But what's the plan? Is the plan to now have your own fleet of vehicles that'll be on a hire purchase and you'll now be a transport operator? Or are you going to be selling it to people that are interested in buying these vehicles? What's the model looking like now? It may not be confirmed, but you can give a hint.
Oh no, for the buses, we're already licensed as an operator, so we'll be operating the buses. The license that we're waiting for the taxi hailing service, that's also separate because it's 2 different entities in Lagos that issue those. The Ministry of Transport will issue for taxi hailing. Lamasa will issue for bus service. So yes, we will be operating like your Uber, and we will be using a different brand name from Uber that we have registered, and that remains to be unveiled.
Interesting. Do I get shares in this company, by the way?
Well, you actually
can we discuss behind?
Yes, absolutely. There's also a part of the scale-up financing that goes to crowdfunding. So what we look to do is to create different like shareholding, fractional ownership of different vehicles in lots. So you invest, there's a base that you can't invest below, and then you own that percentage of a vehicle, and you get the revenue as the vehicles operate. So it can be in the crowdfunding bit, or it can be in the private placements when you and I speak. Right.
Good. Someone asked a question. They say, my question is, since we have a license to manufacture EV cars, I hope he's referring to you, by the way, are we aware of improvements on EV technologies like EV regenerative acceleration, and what plans do we have as regards adoption? I think we spoke a bit about that earlier, but if you can touch on that.
I did. Yeah. Probably joined us late, but So first off, yes, we have been licensed to manufacture and assemble electric vehicles locally. The same thing Innocent did is what we're doing. We're partnering with those who know how to do this. In Nigeria, we say follow who know road, right? So we're partnering with Chinese OEMs and we're using their technology. And yes, regenerative technology on the electromagnetic force of the braking system will be in play as well. We already see that with the buses. It varies from vehicle to vehicle. In most sedan vehicles, you find regenerative technology at contributing a charge of about, say, between 12 and 20%. But we've seen in the buses, the larger vehicles, up to 34%, actually. So, and that's a function of terrain, it's a function of, the route, because it's a braking system, energy generation. So if it's a smooth route without much traffic, you don't optimize that capacity. But if it's a route that has a lot of traffic and you move, you brake, you move, you brake, then you generate more energy through that. And I hope that answers your question.
It won't be complete without me asking this question. How are we going to deal with wear and tear? How are you dealing with that now? Again, your buses are still new, so you probably haven't started dealing with wear and tear. What are the plans to deal with wear and tear, taking into consideration that everything is imported into the country? Remember when everyone started installing solar units in their homes, we had issues where the battery has a little fault and people can't fix it. However, we've moved to the point where solar companies are providing aftercare. Some of the companies are even, I won't say the main OEM domiciled here, but they have very good training that they can do a lot of the restarting and all of those things required. So now we're in a better place, right, with solar, and we can see prices going down even from the Chinese manufacturers as well. How do you see the progression with EVs?
On the maintenance side, we have a tight partnership with our OEM, Yutong. They have technicians locally who help with the service. On the wear and tear side, it's things like air filter, bushing from the suspension, nothing much really, except for when you get scratched, and that's body work. There's not a lot. That's why we keep saying that the maintenance cost of electric vehicles remain much lower, than the internal combustion engine vehicles. So yeah, that's where it is. And then we're training local guys as well. And of course, as we grow the fleet, we train more people, we build more service centers. So it's the entire ecosystem that we're engaging, So we chose the right technical partner in Yutong.
Okay. I have two questions, but let me see if I can take both. But the first one would be, as you know, we insure our vehicles today, at least for those who are doing the right thing. You insure your vehicles, and sometimes it's a bit costly, right? Because you want to ensure that in event of an accident or theft, you get the replacement cost, right? The main replacement cost back from the insurance company. How's that looking with EVs? Insurance companies happy to take on that cost to insure? And insurance companies typically say, oh, if there's an event within the first 3 months or 6 months, we'll pay you X%. Things we don't really read when we sign the agreement. What would that be for EVs?
They were skeptical initially because of the cost as well. The first set of buses we bought, each one was $406,000. And the technology was new to them. They weren't sure, but they did. And they have realized that it's no different from any other rolling stock. You find more and more insurance companies insuring electric vehicles today. There are cyber trucks on the streets of Lagos that are insured as well. And those costs, a nifty dime. And you notice as well that the cost of insurance, has gone up significantly now. so they're able to, support this sector. So, and as you see the prices of electric vehicles dropping, you will see more confidence grow in the insurance sector, to provide cover for electric vehicles.
Okay, and then my last question is around funding. I'm an infrastructure investment professional, so I'm always where the money is, right? So I think you guys self-funded the first rollout. And I know a lot of companies are interested, but I think in Nigeria, there are more companies investing in small, so it's more, I won't say it's social, but 3 legs or very small cars. I don't see a lot of companies doing the big buses like you're doing, maybe just a few if at all. What's the landscape looking like for funding local currency and getting foreign investors? I know we've had this conversation many times, but for e-mobility.
Foreign investors are willing. They're willing if they see that the investments will make sense. Mm-hmm. It makes sense to them, particularly, in the high capacity mass transit buses space. It makes sense to them when it's a partnership between the private sector and the public sector, recognizing that mass transportation is not necessarily a profitable sector. So they want to see minimum ridership guarantees coming from government so that at least their capital is protected and they can cost recover. Right, so there's funds available. Now, locally, you find banks, trying to look at the smaller vehicles, financing those, financing 3-wheelers, financing 2-wheelers, but the high capacity buses still, somewhat a bit above, what they would like to chew. The Bank of Industry is quite bullish, as well about this. They provide funding. Even for the high capacity buses, at least to a limit. There's a single obligor limit that they respect, but they're happy to invest. So funding is challenging, but not impossible.
Okay. So I'll allow you give some few words to wrap up, and then I would say some few things before we close.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's been an interesting conversation. On the biofuel side, whether it's plastic conversion or biodegradable materials and all of that, the bottom line is, in an environment where there's energy poverty, anything you can find is what you put into the frame, right? So whatever it is we can do, even to support transportation using biofuels, let's do it. Lamata is working on something like that with the government of Sweden, looking at converting waste to biofuels and using whether it's the gas or the fuel to power vehicles directly or power charging stations. The bottom line is, let's reduce our carbon footprint and let's take it personal, right? It's a personal agenda. The environment belongs to all of us. We may argue till we're blue in the face that Africa contributes 3.8% of global GHG emissions, but recognize that Africa does not experience the impact of climate change at that same proportion. As a matter of fact, we may very well be at the center of the adverse impact of climate change. Therefore, it is every individual's responsibility to ensure that we take our carbon footprint seriously, de-escalate your carbon emissions as an individual, as a home, and then hold your governments accountable to their own de-escalation program at the state level or even the federal level.
Thank you very much for that great closing. Just to round up from my end before the vote of thanks from Andrew Lee, my colleague, I would say, first of all, thanks, Ademola. Thanks for fitting this into your schedule. You're a very busy person, and I appreciate that. Also, for everyone that's listening, so I heard the Africa region for the OxCAN. We have a number of sectors: energy, waste management, water management, land management, food and farming, and sustainable transportation. So I started with the last part. And over the next month, we will be touching different areas. So people asking questions about waste management, we will have another session touching on that with people that are leading these engagements and the other sectors I've managed. I mentioned, I beg your pardon, earlier. So thank you all for listening. And then I'll hand over to Andrew to do the vote of thanks, and then we'll call it a wrap. Just to add, by the way, is that we have this being streamed on YouTube. So you can go back and watch. You can drop your questions if you like. I'll drop my email address and we can pass them on to Ademola as well. And we can engage after this webinar. Thank you. So Andrew, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Ademola. Look, I think this has been a remarkably good webinar. I've certainly enjoyed it. I think there's a lot for everyone to learn, and with regard to climate change, we need more and more conversations, flow of ideas. We're eminently aware of how complicated issues to do with climate change, how complicated the issues are, and how additionally complicated they become when they enter the political sphere, as Ademola eloquently talked about, with making steps forward and steps back, and governments not always being entirely supportive, and yet the need to incentivize clean energy and transportation. So look, I think it's a really good overview. Wonderful to hear about the plans of scalability and cascading ideas, which is, making a plan is always key to what we have to do to deal with climate change, and also the whole idea, on the one hand, of it being bankable, but I know we're talking about the broader range of sustainability, but it actually has to be financially sustainable as well, and so I think you've covered that issue enormously well. I don't want to speak anymore because we're already a little over time, and I know people's time, that are having other things to do. But Ademola, thank you very much. Really appreciate your contribution today and your time, and to Barbara, who's done an excellent job. We're not really in a position to do a round of applause, but I think we can take that as read. But thank you very much. It's been a lovely event, and we look forward to many more. Do have a look at the OxCAN website, because we have a range of blogs and other webinars that are about to unfold. So please join. You can join through the website as well. Keep track of what we're doing, and look to see you at another event.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks, Barbara. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ademola. Thanks, everyone. Feel free to follow us on the website, LinkedIn, and Instagram, as you can see on the page. And look forward to the next webinar. Thank you.
Okay, we'll close now.
Bye, everyone.